sutta that is very well known, actually, but perhaps not always explained in depth. I'm sure you can find explanations in depth, but I thought, as usual, rather than me just telling you what to think about it and how to understand it, let's have a discussion and bring it alive. So I have made a few little notes, but basically this will be a discussion and we'll see how far we get with it. It is the Mangala Sutta or the Mahamangala Sutta, and it's from the Sutta Nipata. Joseph looks glad. I thought you might like it, actually. From 2, which is which section? Forget, but it's 2. Oh, from the Chulavagga 2, which is number 2, Sutta number 4, and the English translation is simply blessings in that particular translation. So I'll show you the book. It comes from the Sutta Nipata, which is a big compilation of suttas, some of which have their origins in some of the texts and can be traced back to early Buddhism, and some of which could be later. The Sutta Nipata is included in the Khuddaka Nikaya, alongside the Dhammapada, the Udana, and the Itivuttaka. This is not all my own knowledge. I'm reading from Bhikkhu Bodhi's introduction. So it's mostly verse, and some is mixed prose and verse, but none of it is entirely prose. I think Diana might appreciate that, being a poet. And several of the suttas are found in the Majjhima, the Anguttara, and the Samyutta Nikaya, which dates them back to the Pali Canon, basically. And some are pre-existing materials from those early Buddhist literatures. So they're kind of compilations in some cases. There's a lot of commentarial material as well around some of the basic verses. So I had a look at this sutta in the Sutta Nipata, and I didn't just get the sutta written out straight. It had a lot of explanation, which if you're interested in, you can look at, but I've tried to kind of pick out a few pertinent points. And I also found a little, another little sort of, well, it looks like this. It's basically going through each quality, and it's analysing each verse in terms of its overarching theme. So I'm going to talk through this as well a little bit. And this is from, I think, Bhikkhu Bodhi. I'm not 100% sure about that. Okay, so this sutta serves as a basis for, you could say, ethics in lay life, but just ethics in everyday life. But it does particularly pertain to living in the world and making sure that we have conducive and suitable conditions to, first of all, accommodate our own comfort, to take care of our wealth, so that we're well off, but without exploiting others, of course, to keep wise company. And we'll go through all of these blessings. There's 38 blessings altogether, but what I like about it is it's very much pointing to how to create a very strong foundation upon which you can then start to build your spiritual qualities. And they're the ultimate highest blessings. But it's also not bypassing the more worldly kind of mundane blessings that are necessary in order to practice. Sometimes I think we don't realize how privileged we are, despite all the troubles we might encounter in our careers, with our bodies, with unexpected things happening to our family members, with governments which are becoming increasingly unstable, but yet we still have the privilege to be pretty much safe. We have shelter, we have food. I hope none of you are going hungry in any way. We have some place to rest. We might be sleep deprived, but we have a place to rest. We basically have enough of the essential ingredients of life in order to practice, and many people don't have that. And that's why they don't come into contact with the Dhamma, right? They're basically focusing on their survival, on their family's survival. Maybe they don't even have a safe place to live, And so to practice the path would seem quite far away. And yet, even within those circumstances, it's incredible that when people are pressed and people are even being, having bombs fall on them, they still have the capacity to share and to look after one another, which is incredibly inspiring. It's a quality of the human heart. But I like the fact that it's not overlooking the need for a certain level of material comfort. It's not saying it's bad to have wealth, but it's how we relate to that wealth, that we relate to it without exploiting others, that we share the benefits, the material benefits that we have, but also the blessings of our lives in general with other beings as far as we can. And the ethics in Buddhism are not only personal ethics, they're also communal ethics. They're also societal ethics, political ethics. Sometimes people try to separate the Dhamma from things like politics. And it's a very excellent way, or actually a really lame way, to stop monastics talking about politics by just writing it off as political when we're actually talking about human behavior quite often, right? So all of that is included in the path. There are ways to vote. There are ways to practice so-called politics, which basically means the way we organize ourselves as communities and societies that are aligned with the Dhamma and that don't lead to further exploitation of others. Okay, so without further ado, we might get into the sutta. And this sutta actually begins with a young deva, asking the Buddha, what are the highest blessings? And in the Sutta Nipata, it talks about 4 types of talks that are given. So the first type of talk is a talk that is given in response to a question. The second type is without a question. In other words, the speaker initiates the talk, the Dhamma talk. And the next type is a coherent talk. And the last type is an incoherent talk. So hopefully we can have a coherent talk, but this particular sutta is the type of talk that is given in response to a question. So the first type of talk. And of course, the Buddha's teachings are always coherent and extremely clear. And I think this sutta is fairly straightforward as well. So let's talk about it in terms of the values to be cultivated. And again, it's from the Sutta Nipata. It's the Chulavagga, which is the second chapter, and it is Sutta number 4. So here we go. So the opening inquiry asks, what is truly auspicious, truly a blessing? And the Buddha begins with this. Number 1, you might be surprised, not to associate with the fools. Asevana chabalanam. Basically, not to associate with people who are immoral, who are not wise, who have wrong view, who maybe don't observe the precepts, they don't observe ethical values. And we're advised not to follow them, not to serve them, and basically not to attend on them. And I was thinking about that earlier because somebody who's staying with us right now has left their position for one reason or another. And there's now a new chair in that faculty. And because that person's not leading in a wise way, people are actually not able to serve. They're not able to follow his direction. And they're actually leaving their job, leaving that university faculty in a bit of a dire situation. And this is what happens when we have people who don't behave in particularly skillful ways, right? People can't follow after them. Apparently recently, even in America, we might think that, many people are kind of rather blind by following the current leadership, voting for him and, remaining loyal. But apparently recently there was some kind of message on the president's platform to basically criticize his own supporters. And you can see how, you can even turn your own supporters away from you. Yeah, by really foolish behavior. So the opposite of that, the second one, is to associate with the wise, panditanam chasevana. So to associate with the wise. And this means people who are skilled in knowing the right path and the wrong path. They are skilled in creating wholesome karma, in other words, wholesome acts of body, speech, and mind. And again, the Buddha says that it's the entirety of the holy life to have wise friends, to associate with good people, with virtuous people, not least because we learn the Dhamma from them, right? And it's also important to emphasize, and I think it can't be overemphasized, how readily we are influenced by one another. And so if we're around the wrong kind of people, it is going to seep in. At some point, we're going to start thinking like them. We're going to start behaving like them. We're going to fall away from virtuous qualities. But at the same time, if we cultivate this association with good, virtuous, wholesome, wise people, especially people who can share the Dhamma with us, then we're going to start naturally leaning more and more towards practicing the Dhamma. It will condition us or recondition us. It will encourage us. It will give us the inspiration to walk on the path. And we start to emulate that person. And the Buddha encourages that, to emulate them insofar as they have wholesome qualities. Yeah. And I think that's an important point, that not everybody's going to have entirely wholesome or unwholesome qualities, but we pick up the good. We can see a person's strengths and say, okay, in that regard, this person has more generosity than me, or maybe more gentleness or patience, or just qualities that I really admire. And in that regard, I want to emulate and take inspiration from this person. There's a lovely sutta that we've gone through before. I think it's called Ways to Overcome Resentment or something like that. And it talks about how even if a person's speech is unwholesome, still they might have physical bodily actions that are relatively wholesome. So we can focus on that. And we can encourage that in the person. Similarly, a person might have unwholesome bodily conduct, but their speech might be very wholesome somehow. And we can rejoice in that. We can encourage that. We can engage with that. So we're never really going to find a person who I think is entirely foolish. There are people who are more foolish than others who we do want to avoid. And sometimes it might even be the case that you don't want to read news about these people because it'll cause anger in you. And then we start resonating with their energy and becoming a little bit worse ourselves, But generally speaking, everybody has a mix of these qualities. And if we can, try and surround ourselves with people who basically are cultivating the path, cultivating the wholesome, then that's going to rub off on us. And then the third one from this first verse is to venerate or to honor those worthy of veneration. Puja cha pujaniyanam. So to actually know where to put your value, in a sense, like where to put your reverence. Who can you put your confidence in? Who can you really respect? I think this is maybe one of the reasons that in life, especially for young people, I think it's quite difficult in the world at this time. The role models that we're surrounded with sometimes are not so inspiring. And people don't know where to place their confidence. Is it in the footballer? Is it in the blogger? Is it in, I don't know who you might place your confidence in. Hopefully nobody that's leading you far astray from the path. But it's hard to get access to the teachings. We're incredibly fortunate to have that. And if you are in the Dhamma, then perhaps the internet can be quite useful in that sense. There's so much Dhamma available now online. But we also need that one-to-one association and that ability to attend to, serve, do little duties for our teachers or our spiritual friends and show our veneration in some way. It uplifts the heart. Yeah. I better get through this, hadn't I? Because I'm getting right into my kind of discussion around it because it's so inspiring for me. But yeah, one little thing is that right now I'm like tidying my room and with the help of my anagarikas and making it really clean, making the bathroom shine. That wasn't me, that was another anagarika. And yeah, creating a little cozy corner where Ajahn Brahm can meditate and taking my stuff out, so that I can move into another room and he can have the room with the shower, even though it's too hot for him in there because the hot water's you can't adjust it. So he uses a bucket instead. But it just makes me so happy to have the chance to do these duties for my teacher, which I don't get a chance to do in Perth. It's kind of this thing where, because it's a monk's monastery, it should be a monk who cleans his cave, even though people can meditate in his cave of any gender when he's not there, of course. But still, there's certain little things that seem very gendered and that sort of tend to keep me out. So, it's really joyful to be able to show our gratitude and pay our respects by the little things we do for one another. Sometimes it can be words of gratitude, just an exchange of, how we feel, because people don't realize they're valued and they are missed. We were just saying to one of the community members that we'll miss them on the retreat because they're not able to come. 2 of them actually are not able to come. And it's nice to say that. It builds friendship. It builds a sense of mutual appreciation and respect. Okay, so I can see that I'm going to talk through this unless I read the sutta first. So how about I just read the whole thing and then we open up for discussion? Is that a good idea? We might only discuss half of it today, realistically, but we'll just see. I'll read the whole thing so that you at least have the content at hand. So that was the first verse, and there's about 10 verses. So the next verse, dwelling in a suitable location, patirupadesavasocha, having good karma from the past, having done good in past lives, pube katapunyata, and setting oneself on the right course. In other words, having right resolution, attasama panidija. These are the highest blessings. Etam mangalam uttamam is how each verse ends. And then the next is known as preparing oneself, training oneself for success in life. And these 3 are a good education. Just trying to see how Bhikkhu Bodhi translates that. Having crafts or skills, or abundant learning, bahusachancha, sipancha. Oh, the next one is learning a craft or a profession, sipancha. And training in discipline. In other words, having a disciplined mind. Vinaya cha susikato. So vinaya means restraint, right? So this is training. Susikato means like well-trained and having well-spoken speech. Subhasita cha yavacha. Good speech, wholesome speech. Okay, so these are the personal trainings that create the foundation for an ethical life. And then the next one is about leading a virtuous life in the world, say fulfilling family responsibilities. So the first one is supporting one's mother and father. Mata pitu upattanam. Maintaining a partner. It says, of course, actually, it says a wife. It usually does, doesn't it? Because we're talking as if everybody's a male. But really, it means a partner. In other words, supporting, providing for, nurturing, I would say, communicating with that person to create a good relationship, and children. Puttadara chasangaho. I'm adding the chas here because only the Pali is written, but when you chant it, it's a little bit different. And lastly, a harmless occupation or an honest occupation. Anakula chakamanta. Etam mangalam uttamam. These are the highest blessings. So the next verse is about becoming a pillar of society. So this starts to move into the wider ring, the wider field beyond our own family. The first one is generosity, dana. The second one is righteous conduct, dhammacharya. Then the helping of relatives and friends, nyatakanancha sangaho. And lastly, blameless actions, anavajjani kamani, having blameless actions. Interestingly, the word anavajjani is the same as anavajja, which is a type of happiness in the gradual training. Anavajja sukha, blameless bliss. And that comes from living a wholesome life. So, in other words, there's no remorse or regret because we've done our very, very best. Given the conditions, okay, we have to cut ourselves some slack because sometimes the conditions, we just make the best with what we've got. Yeah. Sometimes those are internal conditions that we can't quite fulfill to perfection just yet. So then it goes on to personal ethics in the next little verse, a life of moral integrity. How do they, if Bodhi translate the next one? Desisting from evil or from bad deeds, let's say. Arati papa, abstaining from evil, virati papa. So in the chanting, it's arati virati papa. And then abstaining from intoxicating drinks. Usually in the precepts, we say that lead to heedlessness, and that's the reason. Majjapana chasamyamo. And diligence in wholesome practices. Appamado chadammesu. So appamado is actually the heedfulness. So first of all, we abstain from the drinks that cause heedlessness, and then we're able to practice heedfulness in developing the wholesome qualities in our hearts. So then we get onto the really deep stuff, the juicy stuff, which is related to our spiritual lives. So all of that was the foundation. And I'm sure that many of you are practicing all of these somehow in your daily lives. But I think it's interesting to have them written in this way so that you can kind of check them off. Is there something more you could be doing to support your family? Are you giving enough attention to a particular friend who might need you at this time? Yeah. Are you getting tempted to have a little glass of wine thinking, never mind, it's no big deal? And is that leading to the wish to take the next one and the next one? Yeah. Is there a craft you could learn? Something you could do to serve in a way that really feels meaningful for you? Maybe you're in a job or a profession that's kind of draining you and that's bringing you down. You're not quite sure that's the way you want to proceed. So could you do some personal development? Could you do some diversity and inclusivity training? That's something we're talking about at the monastery, getting some proper training in these things. There's always something more we can learn, something more we can do to try to help our actions become even more harmless and more helpful to others, more inclusive to others. Yeah, to try and limit that harm that we develop, that we create in life. So, with the basis of those ethics and those values, we go on to developing our spiritual virtues, our inner virtues. So, the next verse is about reverence, garava, developing reverence, humility, nivata, contentment, santuti, and gratitude, katanyuta. So that verse is garavo chanivato cha santuti cha katanyuta. It's a very beautiful verse. And I think the next one's part of that verse too. Kalena dhamma savana etam mangala muttama. So the next one is hearing the Dhamma at the right time. In other words, from time to time, listening to the Dhamma when it's a good time to do so. So hopefully this is a good time for all of you here. And we need to do it regularly, not only once and expect that you understand, but even to hear these teachings again and again and again. You know, you could study this sutta alone for the rest of your life, and you wouldn't really get to the heart of it, to the depth of it, until you are actually a stream winner, right? Sometimes Ajahn Brahm says, people think my books are for beginners, especially opening the door of the heart, right? They say, oh yeah, that's just like pop Dhamma or something. And he says, well, you know, keep reading it, because until you've actually perfected those stories, it hasn't done its job. Can you really practice the two bad bricks in the wall? Do you know that one? Two bad bricks? Not focusing on the two faults in a person at the expense of the 998 beautiful qualities they have. So that person is still a good friend, still a wise person, even if they have two glaringly obvious faults. How about you? Do you have any glaringly obvious faults? You do? My gosh, you can't be good spiritual friends to each other then? Or, or to yourself? Can you see the glaringly obvious 998 qualities? Because I can. Can you? Keep looking if you can't. They keep writing to me from Specsavers and saying, I need new glasses. So maybe you need to go to Specsavers and get some new lenses and make them pink with metta or yellow with karuna so you can see your beautiful qualities. Okay. All right. So that's that verse. And then the next verse, remember, this is progressive. So if you've got that down, this is the next one. Kanti. Kanti paramam tapotitika. That means kanti, patience, or we could call it acceptance, or we could call it fortitude. We could call it persistence, gentle persistence, not giving up, relaxing, trusting, inspired confidence, perhaps. Kanti is the highest quality. It's the highest quality because it gives all the other qualities time to develop. We have to give ourselves time. Yeah, time for the defilements to be worn away, time for the beautiful qualities to come forth, and to completely recondition our minds, our actions of body, speech, and mind. So Kanti, and then Sovachasata, which here says being amenable to advice. I don't think I got the Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. I didn't get that far because the chapter was so thick. But I like that. Being amenable to advice or being easy to teach. It's related to humility in a way. It's being open. Recognizing we don't have all the answers yet. We don't really know what's going on yet. Unless you're a stream winner, which many people might think they are when they're not, by the way. You can't be a stream winner and not know it, though, but you can not be a stream winner and think you are. So don't worry, but you're probably not. But it's better to think you're not than to stop short of it. So being amenable to advice, there's something we've yet to understand. And receiving advice. Sometimes we don't necessarily agree with it, but if we don't at least receive it, there's no way we can do an honest inquiry. You know, I remember times when I've been given feedback that's been clearly wrong. You know, somebody's told me that I was coming from a place that I know I wasn't coming from. But I've said to them, well, you know, let me have a look. Let me get back to you. Let me have a look if there's something in that. And we can do that. We can sort of say to a person, okay, let me just check that out. Thank you for the feedback. And then I came back to them and I said, you know, that's really not where I was coming from. This is where I was coming from. That was years and years ago, but it was an important lesson for me because my instinct was to react and get defensive straight away. So when we're amenable to advice, we can hear the Dhamma, we can hear the teachings. And if we don't understand something yet, we can maybe leave it aside. We don't have to throw it out. We just have to understand, okay, that doesn't resonate yet, but maybe there's something in it. Maybe I can experience that later. Maybe it'll become clear. The next blessing, get this, seeing renunciance, the sight of a samana, samananam chadasanam, the sight of a renunciant. Just the other day, Ajahn Ram was talking about why he still travels on public transport so people can see the monastic robe, because that gives you the sense that, oh, there's another path to take in life. I remember when I first saw my first monastics and I was just overwhelmed. I was so joyful. It was like, oh, a real monastic, you know. And this was in the context of India, which is anyway a country of many spiritual seekers of different religions, of different sects, and sometimes, yeah, genuine kind of wanderers looking for the truth without a teacher. Sometimes I saw Jain monks and nuns, I served them in retreats, I saw Buddhist monks and nuns. But yeah, it really was the sight of the first Buddhist monk and Buddhist nun that I remember that really, really went very deep into my heart. Yeah. And that can also, of course, be a blessing because we have the opportunity to offer to them. Yeah, we have the opportunity to support people who don't have jobs, they don't have a worldly way of earning their livelihood, but they earn it basically through the goodness they develop in their heart, through their renunciation, through being of service to others without expecting anything in return. And the last one in this verse is timely discussions on the Dhamma. So Kalena Dhamma Sakacha. The last one was Kalena Dhamma Sawana, which means hearing the Dhamma. But now we're on Kalena Dhamma Sakacha, which is why the Sutta discussion. You've got an extra blessing. It's not the same as coming to a Dhamma talk. You're actually coming here to discuss the suttas. So we have to discuss, clarify any misunderstandings, apply it to our lives, hear from other people, hear different perspectives on what we think we've understood, and really allow it to sink in, really kind of analyze and draw these teachings apart, look at them in detail. Don't think you've got it the first time you've heard it, but really bring it to life as best you can. So now, and it will be finished very soon for discussion, we have the ascent towards realization in the next verse, practicing and attaining the world transcending Dhamma. Doesn't that sound beautiful? So here we have tapo cha brahmacharyan cha arya satchana dasanam nibbana satchikiriyaya etam mangalamuttamam. So I'll break it down. The first one is austerity, tapas, or tappa, tapo. Austerity is one translation. It literally means practices that burn away the defilements. It's actually burning. It means something that burns, but it means burning away the defilements. Celibacy, or the holy life, brahmacharya. So now we're abstaining from sexual activity completely. And by extension, in a sense, we're starting to rein in the senses. We're starting to draw in the senses from the sensual pleasure to cultivate or to make important the pleasure of the mind. Seeing the noble truths. Arya Satchana Dasana. So not just seeing the samanas, but seeing the noble truths, the liberating noble truths. So by now we're stream winners. Look at that, a little step only from brahmacharya to Arya Satchana Dasana. So if all the other factors are in place, the life of a renunciate or the life of a sincere lay person who maybe does observe celibacy. I have plenty of friends in the lay life who live a celibate life. You're not that far away. You're not that far away. It doesn't mean if you are sexually active that you're far away either, okay? Because there are lay people in the Buddha's time who had ordinary married lives and they were stream winners. I think there was even the case of a once returner whose passion and craving and ill will was very much placated. It was very weak, but they still had marital relationship with their partner. So it is possible, but it's harder. It's harder. And I think it's a sort of sign on the path when we don't depend on those worldly pleasures so much that we are developing our meditation, we are developing in the Dhamma. We feel cleaner, we feel freer, we feel more energy as well. And then the realization of Nibbana, Nibbana Satchikiriyacha. Etam Mangalamuttamam. These are the highest blessings. So this is the realization of Nibbana, probably full enlightenment. And lastly, the last verse is about that fulfillment, embodying the world transcending Dhamma in the world. So how does it look? How does an arahat go about their day? Do you know how an arahat goes about their day? Have you ever seen one? I don't know if I've ever seen one. I've seen people who are probably not far off. So, Puttasaloka Dhammehi Chittam Yasana Kampati. I love that. I remember when Goenkaji used to chant this in the first retreats I went to. It basically means when one faces the changing worldly conditions or the vicissitudes of life, praise, blame, pain, pleasure, loss, gain. What's the other one? Blame and praise? Did I say that? Yeah, there are always two that I forget. All those ups and downs, which are called the worldly winds. The mind remains unshaken. Chittam yasa nakampati. Anukampa means like resonating or trembling with compassion. That kind's okay. That's part of the mind of an arahat. But this means the kampa, the shaking, which is due to the worldly winds, due to those changing conditions of the world. So the mind doesn't shake when it meets those changes. It remains asokam, virajam, and kemam. It remains sorrowless. We don't cry. We don't shed tears. Even when our loved ones pass away. It doesn't mean we should suppress it, by the way. We're talking about the result of the practice, not something we have to sort of, contrive. We don't try and contrive this. Let yourself cry. I let myself cry the other night for hours, actually, because something was building up and it was hormonal. It was many things. It was exhaustion. And I just realized, wow, I can't do this in my day-to-day life because I have people around me. I have lots of duties to perform, lots of people leaning on me, and a lot of people dying as well around me in the community and at a distance. And yeah, I just let the tears come and felt a lot of relief after that. So don't be afraid of these things. But here we have a mind that is naturally sorrowless. There's nothing to sorrow for anymore. And a mind that is passionless, virajam, or clean, clear. A mind that is secure, kemam. And kema, or kemam, is a synonym for nibbana. One of the senior most bhikkhunis, the foremost in wisdom, was called Venerable Kema in the Buddha's day. So she was a Savaka Arahat. We hear a lot about Venerable Sariputta and Moggallana, but the Buddha had his two chief female disciples, Venerable Kema and Venerable Upalavanna. And Upalavanna, like Mahamangala, was the foremost in psychic powers. Kema was the foremost in wisdom. And then the very last little bit says, Sabbata maparajita, sabbata sotim gachanti, etam mangalamutama, which means a person like this is victorious everywhere and they attain security everywhere. So that is the Mangala Sutta, and it's a lot, but we went through the whole thing. And I would love to open it up for some free-flowing discussion now. Any of the points, any reflections, anything you're struggling with or doing well with or want advice on, please feel free to ask. And if we wish, we can continue this another week, but let's see how it goes. All right, so I'm coming to Joseph first of all. Hi. Whoops. Seem to unmute and mute.
Sadhu. With gratitude and thankfulness, supreme reverence, loving kindness, I offer the Sangha this gift, I offer all beings this gift. Homage to the highest blessings in all times and all directions. By this vast appreciation, may you all be healthy and glad.
Sadhu. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I had a question to clarify about blessings. Like in the Anguttara Nikaya 1030, there's the term metu pahara, which means offering of loving kindness. And I had listened to the Deeper Dhamma by Ajahn Brahm that you had recommended from 2009. And I can't remember exactly what his words are. I don't want to misquote Ajahn Brahm. But he was referring to how he likes to bless people with water, like a concrete expression. And he said that he knows it's silly, but he still does it, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to just clarify my view about that because I actually think it's very kind. One of my most cherished memories of Ajahn Brahm is at a novice ordination. I turned to look at him, and someone had handed him a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And he had grabbed a rose, and he started to dip his rose into the tea and start blessing people with it.
He used holy tea instead of holy water. That's much better than holy water, isn't it, for an English monk?
Very beautiful.
As long as it was hot.
No. My intent. So he said it, so I trust him as a teacher that he says that. But I wanted to clarify what he maybe it's the question for him. But when the way I understand it is that he's wishing people to be safe. What he's giving a blessing means is a concrete expression of kindness.
Right.
So I wanted to clarify why you think why maybe he's talking to the monks. Maybe it's because the way I see it is that watching someone witnessing an act of kindness is a source of health and happiness. So why would he say it's like, why would he not, what's the view about blessing people with water that I might be missing? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, one of the blessings that you were already receiving, of course, which is listed in the sutta, was samananam chadasanam. You were seeing a samana, right? The sight of a samana is a blessing already. So whatever that samana is doing, you already have a blessing. So if the samana is sharing their tea by spraying it all over you, then well, you're seeing the samana all the same. And I think it's about where that intention comes from. So like you say, you were perceiving that as an offering of kindness and just a way for him to be affectionate. Because, for monastics, especially for monks, to be fair, not so much for nuns, at least with women. But for monks, it's not really possible to kind of show your care and love physically, right? For all kinds of reasons. And, whether it's the socialization or it's just like, sometimes he pats a monk on the head or something like that. And sometimes to me, he kind of goes whoosh, 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 but he can't actually so that's a sort of way of showing affection. But I think the point of this sutta is that it's talking about the kind of blessings that are not received from others, but that are blessings in our own lives through our own practice and our own melting cultivation. And they're the kind of blessings that are actually going to lead us all the way to enlightenment. No amount of blessings from another being is going to actually take us all the way on the path. The main benefit we get from associating with the wise is that we hear the Dhamma, and that we get inspiration to practice the Dhamma. We get role models who can show us the benefits of practicing the Dhamma. And as a result, the path starts to actually happen. Our conduct actually starts to change. So only receiving blessings from others and not taking that internally, not internalizing those blessings and cultivating qualities through the inspiration isn't enough. Yeah, but if you're a devotional type, then of course, maybe those kind of things are very good. But I think most monastics who have realized some Dhamma and who have come out of the sort of attachment or belief in the efficacy of any kind of rite or ritual or ceremony to bring about enlightenment, they won't emphasize that. They'll make it clear that these are sort of conventional things to do, which create a nice atmosphere and, create a lot of kindness. But eventually they'll encourage you to practice. And I think most of Ajahn Brahm's disciples do practice. He's very keen to spread the message to the lay community in particular that even for non-ordained people, it is very possible and achievable to experience deep states of meditation, and from there to see what a mind is like without, the hindrances, without even the five senses, so that there's a possibility to see the Dhamma of the Buddha. Yeah. Yeah. Could you speak nice and clearly? Loudly. So we have a question here.
Yes, so just thinking about dwelling in a suitable locality, like what does that really mean? Does it mean we live in like a quiet place so we can practice samadhi really well?
Yeah.
Does it mean we've got nice neighbors who approach us? Does it mean it's a safe place without conflict and war? Does it mean it's an easy place, like you can get to things easily? And for lay people, what does suitable locality? What might that mean? And for monastics or renunciates, what's a suitable locality? So just many questions about this dwelling in a suitable locality.
Excellent. I think that was probably audible for everybody. Yeah. Thank you so much for making that a clear and really helpful question. And I think, in a sense, we could say yes to everything, right? We could say yes to having great neighbors, yes to having quiet, yes to being close to amenities, but they're not the principal important things. the way the Buddha was talking about a suitable place was very simple, very clear. It was a place where the Buddha's teachings are available. That is a suitable place. A place where the Buddha's teachings are available. And happily, there's a place in the suttas which also says, and it's in the commentaries as well, that also says a place where there is a bhikkhu and a bhikkhuni sangha and well-practiced laymen and women. In other words, a suitable place is a place where you have the fourfold assembly, because that is the best representation of the Dhamma, right? It's the most inclusive representation of the Dhamma, where you have monastics and lay people from every background, hopefully from every gender, from every race, different colors, different gender orientations, different sexual orientations. The more diverse, the better. So the fourfold assembly is always the very best. It's also said that it's a place where people can practice giving. Of course, if you have monastics, there's a very obvious way to practice giving, not only to lay people, because we can share with lay people, we can share through charities, we can share with those who are affected by wars. We can try to get aid relief, and sometimes that's the most important thing to do. Maybe more important sometimes than, offering to monastics. Sometimes there's a crisis and it's a matter of life or death. But the point of giving also to the Sangha is that you're helping sustain the teachings. You're helping the teachings stay alive, be practiced, and be spread in this world. So ideally, we save some of our income to practice giving to wherever it's needed, right? And also, the more virtuous a monastic, the better that donation is going, the more effective it's going to be. And also, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi said, the conditions where we can actually perform good karma, right? Any place that we can perform good karma. So I would say a monastery is perfect because you have a chance not only to practice. It's great if it's quiet. It's not essential, but it's great if it's quiet. But you also have the opportunity to serve. And further on in this little sutta, it did also talk about having crafts, having skills. And part of that was for the sake of being diligent in undertaking the various tasks to support our fellow monastics in the monastery. So if we have many skills, we can perform even more effective service. I've had to learn many skills, which I wouldn't yet call skills, in this project in order to serve the Dhamma and spread the Dhamma more widely, like writing things on websites, creating newsletters, setting up Zoom sessions, all of those kind of skills that I didn't really have. I still probably don't have them well, but enough to spread the Dhamma. And that becomes a very, very suitable place. We can all look after each other. And also there's something said in the Anguttara Nikaya, I think it's 524, Anguttara Nikaya 524, where if we have that kind of place where we can practice these little services, it gives a protective quality to one another, to the community. We nurture each other in that way.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I've got also a follow-up question. So, sure. Based on what you say, does that mean if people are living far away from the monastery, they must be concerned and move closer?
Good question. What do you reckon, everybody? Should you be concerned that you're living far from the monastery?
Just based on your answer, but it's good to be near the full.
I think it's wonderful to be physically close.
Right.
I think there's no substitute for that, but then there is something, which is these Zoom sessions, right? I think a suitable place is essentially a place where you can hear and practice the Dhamma. I mean, I know that many of the people in this Zoom room now have been on our Zoom retreats. And at the time that they were on those Zoom retreats, they were with the Fourfold Assembly, even from their own home. So your home became a very suitable place. It might be that the people in the immediate neighborhood are not practicing the Dhamma. In fact, there was one year that I was practicing my Vassa in the middle of Oxford, and I went down one of the roads there, and there were like several people just drunk, stupid drunk. There was this one woman, she came up to a lamppost and she tried to catch it, and she literally spun around it and collapsed on the floor in the heap. And then I walked further down that street because I was actually giving some of my surplus vegetables to a friend. I was going to drop them at Catherine's house. I went down Cowley Road. And I turned the corner along South Park, and there was somebody just crouching on the street drinking whiskey, looking a mess. So in a sense, you could say that wasn't a suitable place. But then when I went back into my little place, there was a completely different energy, and I had access to Ajahn Brahm through Zoom. And at the end of that Vasa, I had a lovely Vasa, very peaceful, very content. I really rejoiced in having my quiet corner in the city. And at the end of the retreat, we did an online retreat, and people could have access to both me and Ajahn Brahm, that's the dual Sangha, represented anyway, and to each other. So we can create suitable places. We mustn't feel that we're victims if we don't have the ideal environment. We can create a good environment. We can put out a note in the local community and say, come and meditate with spiritual friends on a Saturday evening, come for tea. There are things we can do. There are things we can do to try and create conducive conditions. But I think the importance here in the Sutta is just how important that is, because we are conditioned. We're so conditioned by our environments, by who we're around. And we need that basic amenity of safety. I mean, during COVID, again, I just used to feel so incredibly blessed to have running water and to be in one place that I could still afford, or the charity could still afford to pay the rent for me during that time. And I wasn't being asked to leave, the rented place. And in the meantime, I was reading about Indian people who, especially workers in the cities who've come from remote villages, being basically sent home without any transport, without any food or water. And they were walking in the middle of COVID, people dying en route, in searing temperatures, and just being cruelly and irresponsibly sent home. We're talking about to the other side of India. Yeah, and I was just counting my blessings every day. So this, I think, is an encouragement to count the blessings for what we have and to continue creating good blessings. Yeah, I hope that goes somewhere.
Yeah, I was just to see if, I don't know if anybody else has thoughts about this, just thinking out loud.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I do think obviously it's wonderful if you have the opportunity to live closer to a monastery. And in some places, where monasteries are mature, a large number of people have moved closer, or at least a small number. I don't know any places where a large number, but sometimes a small number, enough to create a community close by. Some people who are in this room have the monastery in their neighborhood. So, and a Minori who's on here has moved closer. Yeah, you're only half an hour's drive away, right? No. So I'm coming to the people in the chat then. So we'll come to Marianne. What do you think? Are you going to move closer?
We'll see. But thank you so much for the space, for this reading. So I was wondering if you could say something about how to cultivate more humility, if you feel like that's something you might need. I feel like I can sometimes, at least, I can sometimes be quite headstrong, and I feel like that can sometimes get in my way. And that resonated also with the being easy to teach kind of aspect. So I was wondering if you could say, something about wholesome ways to cultivate that.
Cultivate humility, yeah. What's that joke about becoming the most humble person in the whole monastery? I've become so humble. I'm so humble that no one's more humble than me. So be careful, because all of this stuff, if we turn it into self-view, can be a hindrance. So try not to make yourself a humble person, but maybe look at where the sense of self is interfering with your ability to receive feedback, your ability to absorb the teachings, to listen, to keep an open mind. It's more the function of humility in order to help you with the practice than sort of becoming humble, because, conceit is one kind of self-view, but you can have the conceit that I am better, or you can have the conceit that I'm worse. So what some people call humility is actually low self-esteem, or a sense of being worse, not good enough, So it's not about being meek or not having your own views. I think a bit of headstrongness is fine. There are different characters in monasteries. Some trainees are very loyal and follow you. Some kind of rub up and they challenge you. Doesn't mean that they're not humble. Sometimes that being a little bit strong-willed, which I too am, believe it or not, most monastics are, is a good quality to have, because it might mean that you're quite discerning, But just to understand at this stage on our path that if we're not stream winners, we don't really understand yet. We can have a view, but we should hold it as a hypothesis and be open to hearing the Buddha's perspective as well. I think one of the ways is to follow the principles of receiving feedback. There's another sutta somewhere in the Majjhima. I think it may even, no, it's not in the first 10, but there's another one in the first 10, which is quite useful, called effacement. But there's some places in the suttas, and I'll dig them out at some point, where the Buddha talks about how to receive feedback. And it's great because it talks about things like not becoming angry when somebody gives feedback, not counter-reproving the reprover when someone gives feedback. It's really quite comical because you can see that we all do this, right? And it's like, oh, people in the Buddha's day were just the same. Not trying to lead the talk astray when receiving feedback, not trying to defer, this kind of thing. So we can do these checklists on ourselves and just ask ourselves through mindfulness to see if we can pause. Yeah, that's another way that you can be more receptive to the teachings. Yeah, but I have met you, and you don't strike me as somebody who's, lacking in humility. You strike me as someone who's willing to learn. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just think of it in a positive way, like, oh, what is it that could, that I could soften around, that could give rise to more humility, more receptiveness, more softness in the mind. Yeah, I hope that helps. Good question. I have to go in order a little bit, but you can stick your hand up and I'll come to you in turn. There's a couple of questions here and then I'll come to you. So, Diana, I'm muting you.
Thank you, Canda.
Hi, nice to see you for a long time.
Really nice to see you too. My question is about blessings that we can cultivate versus blessings that are kind of given to us by circumstance. And some of these, a lot of them are ones that we can cultivate ourselves, but some of them you may or may not have.
Yeah.
So if you could talk a little about how we can orient ourselves towards the blessings we do not have in life without feeling self-pity or getting...
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Thanks for making that distinction, because it does sometimes seem that, we all have different conditions. We all have different kind of baseline from which we can build our lives. And for some people, it's much harder through no fault of their own, actually, through oppression or marginalization or just basic inequalities that exist. So it's very important. And I think, in a sense, with the Buddha's teachings, I would say we start from what we've got. We start on the blessings we do have. I think one of the ways we can reflect on this sutta is actually to use it as a reflection, to rejoice in the blessings we have and to bring the mind to a level of joy and happiness and appreciation. And by doing that, we develop more qualities, we get more gratitude. It's not that we've got more than we had before, it's just that we value what we've got, right? So that's one way to instantly increase all of these blessings, recognize a little bit of each that we have. It does say in here that one of the blessings is having done good karma in the past. And so to some extent, that might be influencing the conditions that we have now, that we think are just happenstance, but it could be related to that. However, we don't really know. And there's always something we can do with the situation we have now. So yeah, there may be some limitations in some areas. Some people are more wealthy than others, and some people are never going to be billionaires. Maybe it's a blessing. Wealth is definitely related to the livelihood part. But yeah.
And also the way others treat us is out of our control.
Yeah. It is out of our control. Absolutely. The way others treat us is out of our control. But again, if we have these qualities, like gratitude, like patience, like a mind that's not easily shaken by other people's behavior, then their behavior will have less effect. There's a sutta that I mentioned last week which says that basically, if we had to experience karma in exactly the same way it was planted, or, in exactly the same way that it was made, there'd be no living of the holy life. So if, we'd done some deeds that felt very bad at the time, we did them in anger. If we had to experience that same anger as a result, there'd be no way out. But the way out is that we create a beautiful mind state in the present. We fill it up with love and kindness, so that if the anger arises again, either as a memory or maybe somebody else, perpetrating anger towards us, then our mind will be wide like a lake, the simile of the salt crystal, so that if you put the crystal of salt, the anger, into that lake, it hardly has any effect. So I think it's true that there might be some places in life that we feel like victims, but we can always work with what we've got. And for me, anyway, the purpose, one of the main beautiful things about this sutta is that we can value the blessings we have in our life, and as a result, just make them much more present in our mind at all times. In a way, displace the feelings of lack with the blessings that we have. But it does also talk about proactive things to do, like being skilled, right? Having many crafts, being disciplined. These are things that we can cultivate. And to answer your comment, Chi, in the commentary, it says that one of the points of being skilled and being disciplined, and having good conduct, basically, is that you'll be more effective in the world, and you will be able to have a place to live. You won't fritter away your resources. So it is important to have enough.
Money itself, or wealth, isn't directly mentioned. It's kind of like, seems like a side.
Yeah.
It's like well-rounded education and a craft. Which then says success, but it doesn't define it as money, which I think is really good, actually.
Yeah. Okay, I'm coming to one question in the box, then I'm coming to you, then another question in the box, because we're almost out of time. So, someone in the room, does being amenable to advice being open to criticism, unsolicited advice, and changing one's actions and preferences following hearing such advice? So remember, first of all, number one in this sutta, associating with the wise, not associating with fools. So who are you taking that advice from? Who are you open to criticism from? If that person who's criticizing you has a valid reason, is a person who maybe doesn't have that fault themselves, maybe we can be open to their perspective. But a person giving advice and criticism should do it in a certain skillful way, following the rules of right speech, truthful, beneficial, the right time, with kindness, gently, not forcefully, not harshly, not shouting, not confronting. Yeah, being sensitive to the time and place. So not just making ourselves like vegetables, like, come and chop me up, I don't care, here I am, you can throw all your criticism on me and that's fine. It doesn't mean this, but it just means being able to hear somebody, being patient with that, and then looking inside to ask yourself, is there something I can learn from that? Yeah, is there something useful in that for me? And maybe there isn't, maybe they're wrong, but you at least take it on as a possibility. So changing actions and preferences, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's kind of up to us to decide. I mean, I'd be far more receptive to somebody's feedback who I really trust and who I know has my best interests at heart than somebody who may be, I don't know, having a lot of defilements in their mind at the time, or someone who doesn't really understand my situation, who maybe I don't know has goodwill. Yeah. So be discerning on the advice that you're willing to receive, but try not to be angry in response. That's important. There's a sutta where the Buddha says, even if somebody approaches me with speech that is not timely, that is not harsh, that is harsh, that is not with loving kindness, that is not beneficial, I shall not let my mind turn to anger because of that. I will remain with thoughts of loving kindness towards that person. Yeah. Can I come to you? Yeah. Can you speak nice and loudly?
So until verse 10,
yeah.
Is it predominantly, is it a developmental, the blessings seems related to more of like the worldly life or the puja jhana before you become a monastic? Because it seems like, you have to have learning, have a craft.
Yeah.
And, take care of your family. Is it more related to like having a strong foundation and developing those blessings in the before? Because it seems like it's not till the monastic is verse 10.
Oh, I don't think so. I think the monastics still have, I mean, I think you're right. It was mainly given for lay people. But I think a lot of this could relate to a monastic as well. I mean, obviously not having a wife or husband and children, although some monastics still have kids, right? And they don't just give up their responsibility for their grown adult children, I'm talking. They don't. They still would care for them as much as they can, but they won't help them in the same way. They maybe help them with spiritual advice. So I would go back definitely to there. I mean, I think having crafts and skills, it says in the commentaries, is very useful for being of service in a monastery. So yeah, it might not, I've just listed all the ways that I've developed new skills as a monastic. So that would relate. I actually think they all relate to monastics mostly, to be honest. And the spiritual path starts properly from the one which here is number 6, but it's actually number 5, generosity, dutiful conduct, helping of relatives and friends. I mean, that becomes more the Sangha. So they're your first kind of immediate circle. But yeah, blameless actions, it's general ethics, isn't it?
So if a monastic does not have abundant learning or craft,
that doesn't matter too much.
It doesn't.
Yeah, well, then you're learning the profession and craft of being a monastic. Right? That's your craft. But it's very good if you're a monastic to have skills in spreading the Dhamma. The Buddha talks in other places in the suttas about, monastics who are well learned in the Dhamma, who are good teachers, who know how to articulate the teachings and share them with others. So still, we're learning certain crafts. I think it's really whatever conduces to developing more and more good karma, more and more wholesome states, and can support you on the spiritual path. But of course, for a monastic, we're not so interested. I mean, actually, you have to learn stuff like even woodwork sometimes. I was going to say woodwork, but the nuns at Dhammasaya do a lot of that. Yeah, you'd be surprised what we learn as monastics on the job. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, the first part is particularly related to lay people, but I think only the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are most 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe. But I mean, even the second one, the very first verse. I mean, not to associate with the fools, to associate with the wise, is fundamental to the monastic life. There's only the maintaining the partner that I would say couldn't apply. Actually,
the wife and husband is the
that's what I mean. Okay.
But I guess
yeah. There's actually, we've finished. Time is out. So I still want to answer the last question, but I'm going to give people the opportunity if they need to leave to not feel bad about that. But I don't like to leave anyone out. So I'm going to come to the last question, which is, please allow me to explain my understanding about having humility, which is by becoming unselfish and not self-centered. That's great. I like that very much as well. Yeah, by being unselfish and thinking of others. That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's in a sense the outcome, isn't it? Like if we have humility, we do start to think about others. But at the same time, the practice of thinking about others is going to create more humility in us. So yeah, thank you for that. All right, I think we're actually going to be able to finish more or less on time, but I will hand to Manoi to say a few words to finish up. And thank you very much for a rich discussion. I don't know. Shall we do this again another time, this sutta? What do you think? We could actually chant it to start the discussion and just translate it and then start again. Yeah? Shall we do part 2 maybe after Ajahn Brahm's tour? So this was the last sutta for a while, and I'll let Manori say a few words, and then I'll let you know what's coming next. Okay. All right.
Yeah, thank you very much, Venerable.
Yeah.
And we are looking forward for the second session of the Mangala Sutta. And for all of us, the community, I like to say a few words about dana, the generosity. Giving develops wholesome qualities that form the foundation of our Dhamma practice. So generosity can be a practice of checking in deeply with us. And here at Anukampa, we offer several ways that we can cultivate this beautiful quality of generosity. So the normal, way, the most common way is to donation financially if you are capable. There is a website link where you can donate through bank transfer, PayPal, or SumUp. Or if you're financially capable, you can do a regular donation through a standing orders. And there are other ways, non-financial ways that you can do. You can offer dana, that is food and cooked food. You can offer it, you can go to the monastery and offer it, or you can do it remotely. And if you want to do, you have to email team@anukampaproject.org. There's a dana calendar as well. And also there is a volunteering option if you have any skills and time which the charity needs. And also there is a needed items list in the website. You can have a look at it and see. And supermarket deliveries.
Yeah.
Thank you very
much. Another thing actually is that we could even have like not just the raw ingredients from the supermarket, but sometimes there's like a dish, like well, I can't have most of them, but something like shepherd's pie or something like, I don't know, what's some ready-made meals, like meals that we can just put in the oven, basically. So it's like you're offering a meal, but we can use it when there's no one here. And actually, I must say, hardly any dana. Ajahn Brahm always says it'll come, but it's just not like that for bhikkhunis. I mean, I'm definitely well known and loved and supported, and this place is incredibly well supported by people from around the globe. But locally, we do not have Buddhists coming to offer dana. Only, I think, 3 times since we got back in like a month, more than a month. So most of the days we have to have guests who need to be cooking for us pretty much every day at the moment. We fortunately have one really great guest who's doing that because my Anagayakas are busy with the final preps for the tour. So that can be very helpful. So you can also write to the team for that. If you do, it's good to live close to a monastery.
Yeah. And Venerable, can I add on that if you are doing that, get an email, speak to teams. They will send you the list of things that the Venerable can't eat, or good or mildly good, and that kind of things. So then when you're buying things, you can check, because there's so much of ingredients. And also there are now several websites who do this freezing food and allergy advisors. So you can go to those websites and have a look. There are new things, and there are new shops open which have frozen food as well. But then the ingredients, you have to see those things. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember actually now. Thanks for mentioning that, because I remember when I was during the COVID time, one of my friends, Jake, who's now a monk at Bodhinyana, yay, he found this company who do food for people with my condition. Low FODMAP meals. I think it was called something Field Doctor or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there are a few if people can,
low FODMAP, and I could eat them basically. And so we had that in the freezer, at some point. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. So now it's time to finish. Right. No, it's not really paleo. It's low FODMAP. But yeah, something like that. Oh, yes. And we did get the water filter. Thank you so much, John, for that. Fantastic. Oh, you're all just so amazingly supportive. Because I always promise I'll read everyone's comments, so I might not have time to answer this, but Joseph was saying that mudita is an appropriate samadhi object. If one recollects and rejoices in the blessings that others offer with body, speech, and mind, encouraging, approving, and praising virtue and the abstinence from non-virtue, wouldn't that be a good way to cultivate the path? Wouldn't it? And isn't it? It's wonderful. And I think that's something that really lights you up. That's what I've noticed. And I think if that's your path, go for it. It's a beautiful quality to develop. And I think that's one of the things that this sutta is all about. Blessings, rejoicing in the blessings of our lives and keeping on generating those blessings. So thank you very much.
So Mel and I both found the low FODMAP thing and put the link there.
Thank you.
But you have to see the ingredients and...
the ingredients are perfect because it's
okay.
Yeah, no, the ingredients is done and dusted. Yeah, they're made for people with SIBO, basically. That's my condition. So, and they're like to the kind of measurement as well, because I don't measure these things, but you should measure. Even the good stuff should be measured. So anyway, I wanted to just let you know that tomorrow there'll be a metta meditation. It'll be the last one also for a couple of weeks because Ajahn Brahm's here. We are live streaming many of Ajahn Brahm's talks. So if you want to know, if you want to join in, just subscribe to our YouTube channel, Anukampa Bhikkhuni Project. You'll get notified. If you are on Facebook, I've put the list of live streams on there. I guess we need to put it on the website. Haven't done that. But if you're willing to just subscribe, if you're not already, you'll get the notifications. So we'll be live streaming from hopefully Sheffield. So that's the 18th. And then the 20th, one talk. And then the Scout Centre retreat, we'll be doing the morning and evening. And then in the weekend retreat, we're doing the morning and the late afternoon. So plenty for you to join in with. I think there'll still be a metta chanting on Wednesday with Minori, if you want to come to that. Yeah, just keep an eye out, basically. You can always just come, and if it doesn't happen, don't give up. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Okay. All right. So take care, everybody, and go well. It's not possible to ask questions during live stream because it's just not possible. We just don't have that kind of volunteer availability. And for the people who are there, you know, we need to prioritize them. So, but you can watch. Okay. So let's unmute you and we can wave goodbye. Ciao.